Dear ladies and gentlemen, my name is Eduard, and I look forward to share with you some thoughts I have, maybe within the next 15 minutes as well, so I will try to accelerate as well, about what I call reality check. And the topic of this session is about increased pressure on Nat Cat models, maybe due to increased frequency, which I'm not so sure it's really happening. But I think there are a number of other reasons why there is an increased pressure on the models these days. And I want to share with you my views on that. And for that, I have identified 4 reasons I will share with you in a minute, what I think puts some of the Nat Cat models under pressure these days. Then the solution is very simple. It's about real data. So I will try to make this exciting, but it's really obvious. I think you need real data to calibrate and validate your models and to improve your models. So very simple, and I have some examples of that, and I will end with conclusions. So what puts some of the models under pressure today? And reason number 1 is, nature is complex, and models are never right, or they are always wrong, you could say. And we have heard some of the examples already this morning and earlier this afternoon. Famous, obviously, Katrina, the Tohoku earthquake, New Zealand quake, and also the earthquake in Italy, which Carlo has mentioned, May 2012 in northern Italy. Just to give you an example, some of the modeling and reinsurance companies published a loss estimate of the industry loss post the 2 events, end of May, and said it was a double-digit million insured loss. And we at PERILS, we collect losses, and I will tell you in a minute, and the real loss of the industry was 1.3 billion euro instead of double-digit million euro. So the models got it wrong post-event by a factor of 10 or more. And this is really what I mean here. The models are just not adequate enough and come up with quite completely, significantly different results than reality. And that's a problem if you use the absolute results of a model. And what I suggest here, that one should use models as a relative tool, as a measure stick, as a relative measure stick, for example, for year-on-year comparisons of your portfolio development. Okay. Reason number 2, it's not so much about inadequacy, but it's more about missing some components of the risk. And again, some examples, 9/11, maybe the very obvious one, a man-made example, but also the earthquakes in New Zealand and Japan again. And we know about black swans, and we had a number of them, and just something to keep in mind, especially for risk management decisions based on models. Then quite a different reason why models are under pressure, it's about credibility. And when there's a model update and the risk assessment becomes more conservative, one can observe a big reaction in the market. This has happened for one of the modelers for their assessment of the hurricane risk. On the other hand, if there is a model update which comes with a more optimistic assessment, there is silence and there's no reaction at all in the market. And I could have added a slide here, very interesting one, from the cat bond market and the choice of the calculation agent. And there's a big impact of the most optimistic and the most pessimistic modelers versus the choice as a calculation agent. And you will not be surprised that there is a bias to choose the most optimistic model when transferring risk to the capital market. I didn't add this because I didn't want to create any big debate here. And reason number 4, and that's maybe the most important one, I believe the models are really built on very limited databases. And I know the modelers and the reinsurance companies put a lot of effort into collecting data, but it's always piece and bits and pieces, and it's always maybe one portfolio from one client, but it's not a systematic data collection. And I think this limited data availability is a big driver for the pressure on the models today, and for uncertainties, and also for big changes from model version A to version B. And the solution is now really a reality check, to take real data and to look at your models, how they perform with real data. And I'm trying to show this here. This is the famous four-box model I learned at Swiss Re a long time ago. I haven't used this for a long time, but you know, the four components of every model: hazard, vulnerability, exposure, and insurance conditions. And this reality check can really happen for each component separately. And to be honest, also for the resulting loss frequency curve. So I will share with you some examples how such a reality check can look like. Maybe starting with vulnerability data. Laurent has talked about it just before, where you know, your model, you can collect loss data, you can come up with a view on vulnerability, also based on engineering know-how, on academic know-how. But the test is really then looking at real data. And you see here as an illustrative example on the left, model vulnerability. So vulnerability really relating the scientific intensity with the damage degree. So on the y-axis, something like wind speed. On the x-axis, something like wind speed. On the y-axis, maybe a damage ratio value. And you see on the right, it's vulnerability data we make available this is for windstorm Xynthia, for residential business in France. And you see that for every département in France, we have one dot, and we plot the wind speed against the market damage ratio. And reality looks like this cloud of points. And I really believe that to validate and calibrate your modeled vulnerability, you really need this type of data. There's little benefit, I think, to use other modeled data to validate models. You should not be validating your model with another model. I think the only way to validate this is with real data. Another component of the model is the exposure. Here I'm sharing industry exposure data for Austria. And again, you know, some of the modelers would have a top-down approach. They take economic data for a country, like census data, and they try to break it down to lines of business and into geographical units. What we do, you know, we collect the data from the companies, from 60% or more of the market in Austria, and we gross it up to market level. So it's really a bottom-up approach based on the real data in the systems of the insurance companies. And that's what I would then call the real IED, which you know, can be used to validate a modeled industry exposure database. And here again, the same message, you know, only the real data will help the models to become more realistic and more stable over time. And finally, comparison of the losses. So on the left, the modeled loss post-event, which you know, some of the modelers would produce very quickly using one of the events out of their catalog. And on the right, the real loss again collected from the insurance companies, gross losses, and extrapolated to market level. And again, you know, only with such data you can start improving your output of the models. And maybe one step further, once you have the data, you could also start building your own model, your own deterministic scenario loss model, and that's what we also do. So post-event, you would get, this is for France example, after winter storm, you get the gust values for each département, and you can allocate a mean damage ratio based on your historic vulnerability, your real vulnerability. You can apply it to your sums insured and calculate a loss. And with this, you can build up your own view, and it will help you to understand the models you're using, the vendor models, better. And it's really a complementary view to the vendor models. And it will make you a more competent user. And we will hear more about Solvency II afterwards. So this will help you. And it just shows you real data will also help you understanding when using models. And just 2 slides on perils before I come to the conclusion. And that's exactly why some of the industry players have set up perils 6 years ago. 2 of them are based in Munich. You see the names listed below of all the big players who set us up. And really, in order to increase data availability, to increase availability of NatCat data for the industry. And what we do, the red boxes here, the insurance companies, they agree to share sums insured and loss data with us, and we gross it up and produce this market database, of which I have shown you some examples. So for the sums insured and for loss data. And we have about 65% of the market in Western and Northern Europe would share data with us. And as a side effect, this box on the right bottom, the loss index service, and that's again a benefit of real data. It's not only about validating the models, but it's also about transferring risk. So to have real data from an independent source can help you for alternative ways to transfer risk, like cat bonds and collateralized reinsurance and ILWs, where we have almost $4 billion of US dollars limits at risk today, using our index based on our data. So real data has more effects. It increases supply of capital. It increases tradability of risk, which will lower the price for everybody. So the reinsurance companies in here would not like to hear that, will not be happy to hear that, but real data has other benefits. I just want to mention that here. And that's a screenshot of our exposure and loss database. That's the example of Italy with the sums insured per province and loss data from one of the 2 earthquakes. And you see we cover all the main windstorms in Europe, flood UK, flood Italy, and earthquake Italy. So conclusions, I just repeat what I already said. I think the models are under pressure, maybe also because the expectations were too high, but mainly because there's a lack of real data which allows a proper calibration of the models. And I think there's only limited benefits to use academic or engineering data to do that. You need real data which will make the models more realistic. And if you go a step further, as I said, you can then also start building up your own independent view. And that's exactly the mission of PERILS, is to help the industry to increase such data availability, to do some of the things I have talked about. Thank you.